All right, and I'm live. Hi, everyone. This is Jordan Pedraza here from the Google for Education team based out of our Mountain View, California headquarters. And today I'm going to be walking through best practices and resources and processes for Google Educator Group's leaders, particularly in North America, Western Europe, and Australia and New Zealand. So if this does not apply to you, you don't have to tune in. And of course, if there are GEG leaders from other regions that are tuning in, that's totally fine. There are going to be some more regional sensitive processes. So when in doubt, always just check with your Google contact or GEG regional lead or post any questions in the GEG leaders community. So with that, I'm going to get started. Please feel free to post any questions throughout this Hangout on the events page or post them in the chat window here. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen now. If you have any trouble, post on the Hangout comment page for the event, and I'll try to troubleshoot as I go along. And we're also going to do this same Hangout tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll be sharing these slides out with everyone too. So we'll make sure that you all have the information you need. So let's get started. All right, so our agenda is pretty sweet and straightforward and short. Just basically going to do some basic introductions so everyone knows who's who. Then we'll talk about regional specific resources and processes for GEG leaders. And then we'll talk about some best practices we've seen so far and collaboration with the Google for Education team. And then finally, I'll wrap up with addressing some frequently asked questions we received so far. And then I'll dive into Q&A. And again, feel free to post any questions or comments on that comment page there for this Hangout. All right, so introductions. So first, I wanted to introduce Carolyn Wendell. She's the global Google Educator Group's program manager who sits in our London office. So she was really our driving force in getting this program together and getting it off the ground. And then my name is Jordan Pedraza, obviously, and I'm the GEG regional lead for North America, Western Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. I sit in Mountain View, and there's my Twitter handle there in case you want to follow me for any updates. So there's a really big team across Google for Education and the Google Educator Group's program. You know, we're spanning several offices, and it's really a team cross-functional effort. And really our goal here is just to support the educator community, making sure they can make the fullest potential, take advantage of the fullest potential of our solutions. So to give everyone just a sense of how far we've come since we've launched this program officially in the last couple of months, we're now launched in over 20 countries in 6 continents, so really exciting. We have over 120 groups or GEG chapters, and then almost 230 leaders in all of these regions. So it's a really rapidly growing movement, and we've seen just tons of interest and enthusiasm. We're receiving new applications for leaders and chapters every day. So we really thank you for everyone out there who's been a part of this effort, and we can't wait to see it really take off in the future. So next I want to walk through just kind of the life cycle for GEGs, because we definitely still get questions on that. So we want to make sure that's pretty straightforward now. So I'm going to quickly just walk through what it's like for just an everyday kind of teacher, educator out there to join an existing GEG. So the first step is they'll find our GEG website, and we've promoted this in lots of channels. On our social media, on different websites we have, and then of course virally in the community. So the teacher comes across the website and get an overview and sense of the program, and then they might decide they want to get involved and participate in some way. So then they'll probably go to the Groups tab, and that's where we direct folks that are interested in joining GEG. That's where we direct them to go. And then next, they'll be shown this map directory of all GEG chapters. And I'll show you what that looks like visually in a second. But they'll see this map where all GEGs are active. And then they can just click on the relevant one that they want to join. And they can join multiple GEGs. You know, there's really no restriction or limits on that. But you know, ideally, we recommend having that teacher join the region that's closest to them, so they can actually make the most of it. So then after the teacher clicks on the relevant GEG, they join the Google Plus community for that chapter, and then they are basically in. They can start attending any events that happen in that GEG. They can participate in the Google Plus community. They can work towards their certifications for Google education tools. So they're welcome to kind of take advantage of the community according to their needs. And then lastly, you know, we encourage, of course, once members kind of get settled and a taste of what this community can do for them, of course, adding in others in their networks to be a part of the movement. So that's how a new teacher kind of joins a GEG. And really quickly, just to show you what that looks like on our website. So here's the GEG website I just mentioned. And on the Groups tab here, this is where we have our map directory. So all these place markers here you know, represent where there's different GEG chapters all over the world. So if someone just clicks on them, and then they can see what the GEG is, and then visit the group, and then they'll be taken to the particular Google Plus community that they can join to get involved. And then we also list out all the regions here, so in case it's kind of hard to find on the map there. So that's how a new teacher joins a GEG. So next, I wanted to show how a new GEG is launched, or how a new GEG leader gets started. So essentially, it's kind of the same process. You'll first start with the GEG website and get an overview and a taste of the program. And then if someone wants to become a leader, they'll click on that Become a Leader button that we saw there at the top of the directory. So once they click on that button, they'll kind of see a description of existing leaders out there, kind of what makes them successful and what attributes they have. And then we say that this teacher or individual needs to get a nomination from either an existing GEG leader or a partner or a Google certified teacher to get nominated. And we've designed it that way so that it's fair for everyone, and it's really community owned and driven. So then next, after that teacher receives a nomination, and of course our GEG leaders and Google certified teachers have access to this form directly. So after they receive that nomination, then the teacher is automatically sent a GEG leader application. So it's very short, and I'll actually show you what it looks like in a second too. And it's all automated. So that's kind of how it works. They get the nomination, and once that nomination form is filled out, they're sent the leader application. So once they fill out the leader application, then they're approved, or if they're approved, they will be sent a welcome letter and then get access to some resources for GEG leaders, particularly the leader portal and the leader Google Plus community. So after they get access to that, they're pretty much ready to go. They can start thinking about their chapter, you know, what they want to call it, creating their Google Plus community, start promoting it, and running and driving events. So that's the process for new leaders. To kind of give you a little bit more details on nominations and applications. So sometimes we get questions on, you know, how can new GEG leaders be admitted? Everyone must be nominated. That's just the baseline requirement there. And again, you can be nominated either by an existing GEG leader, Google certified teacher, or a GEG partner out there in the community. And if you're already an existing GEG leader, and if you want to add co-leaders to your chapter, just nominate them via the nomination form. So we've shared out this nomination form on the relevant mailing lists, and we've included it off of the GEG leader portal. Let me just show you where that is really quickly. So if you go to the GEG leader portal, and then resources, and then forms, here's where you'll get access to all the forms we're talking about. And I'll explain what these other forms here are in a little bit, but the nomination form can be found at the bottom. So you click on that, and then here's the nomination form. So this is where if you have another potential co-leader out there that you want to nominate, or someone else wants you to nominate them, this is the form that you use to do it. Some other considerations for the nomination form. We really recommend checking the GEG directory map I showed you a minute ago first before you nominate someone. So just so the nominee knows whether there's no GEG chapter and they can go ahead and get started once they get approved, or if there already is an existing GEG chapter nearby, then recommending that they get in touch with that existing chapter and just join forces with those leaders there, because we really don't want to have duplicate chapters out there. And then also, this nomination form is confidential, so please don't reshare this publicly or post it anywhere. Really, just it's for our purposes to have our community leaders nominate new leaders for us. And then the GEG leader application. So this is what it essentially looks like here. It's pretty quick, it takes maybe a couple minutes to fill out. All GEG leaders must complete this application. This ensures that they have accepted our terms and conditions for the program, that they're formally in our system for kind of reporting and support purposes. And then, of course, so we can also share our materials with them. So once someone is approved, we'll add them to a silent mailing list, so that enables us to give access to tons of different materials like the Leader Portal, and then also the GEG Leaders Google Plus community. So the GEG Leader application is very important. That basically kind of gets you into our system. So here's an example of this GEG Leader Portal I keep mentioning. It's basically your one-stop shop if you're a GEG leader. Everything from your very first days to getting started, best practices on setting up your GEG, your Google Plus community, running events, event ideas, and all the relevant forms that you'll need or branding guidelines you need to get started and being a part of this program. Here's the link here. I don't recommend trying to memorize it here. I'm just putting it for reference for when we share out the slides, but there it is in case you want to write it down. Another easy way to find it is once you're in the GEG Leader Google Plus community, in the About This Community section, we actually link off to the GEG Leader Portal there as well. And then you can feel free to bookmark it on your own after that. And then also when you are first sent your welcome letter, we also include a link to the Leader Portal. So several ways to access it. If you ever have trouble finding it or misplacing it, let us know and we'll send it again. But there's some easy ways to kind of find it for you. And then, of course, the GEG Leaders Google Plus community that I've mentioned. So once you're approved as a GEG leader, you'll receive an invite via email directly. And hopefully the email that you've included on your application is the one that you would want to use on Google+. If there's any discrepancy there or changes that need to be made, just let us know and we can update that and invite the correct account. This GEG Leaders community is private, so that's why it's directly only via invite. And here's where you'll get tons of news and resources from the Google team. And then also it's a space for GEG leaders, really, to develop their own community, share best practices, give each other support and ideas around how they're leading and running their GEGs. All right, so now I wanted to give a little bit more details on getting started. So first, let me just show you the GEG Leader Portal again as an introduction. So I already showed you this was the tab for forms, but if I just want to go back to the Home tab. So this is the portal. So I mentioned there's several different categories here for your support. So Getting Started tab is probably the first one you're going to use. And really we break it down by the kind of key steps involved. So first, starting out as a leader, then starting as a group, and you're in your first events. And we've tried to bucket it into step-by-step guides, and it's really straightforward, easy to understand language here. So really just trying to get you to feel excited and ready to try this out. So this is all here. Some other tabs that would be of interest about your actual chapters, best practices there, guidelines if you want to collaborate with other leaders, or if you want to pass on leadership and nominate others to be co-leads, that's all there. Under events, we have tons of resources here. particularly if you ever need ideas on what kind of events you can be doing. Just go to the event section and check out event templates. And we've been collecting these over time, and we're going to keep adding more. But there's several types of events that we've seen happen or have been prototyped that we think can be really fun. So it could be anything from social, to just getting some food or a picnic or happy hour, or maybe just kind of introductory, focusing on giving everyone the basics on Classroom or Google Plus or Docs. Some can be just virtual over Hangouts like we're doing now. Some can be a little bit more hands-on, such as a training or a workshop. We have a cool template in particular with training called Workshop in a Box. I just wanted to highlight here. So each kind of event template that we have, we kind of give you more details on what it all looks like, how it could work, what are the next steps for you to try it out on your own. So here's just an example. If you wanted to do a workshop in a box, here's literally all the things you would need to know. And of course, you're always welcome to kind of tweak and adjust whatever we provide here as a template for your own needs. But it's all here for you. So that's resources on events, and then of course some other resources on events here for promoting your event. We kind of give you some tips and best practices there, and then event follow-up. So how do you collect feedback, and then how do you report out to it after you've conducted it. Some other resources are on Google Plus. If you have needs around getting your Google Plus profile together, your Google Plus community for your GEG chapter, and kind of tips and best practices there. We have a support page, kind of gives you guidelines on how Google helps support you with this and other partners and mentors we have. Of course, lots of resources on the curriculum and our products. And then, of course, for forms for reporting and branding. So it's all here. Definitely take a look when you have time. But to kind of go back into detail around getting started. So I wanted to call out kind of 6 major steps here. The first is after you get a nomination or you've completed the leader application. We may reach out if we notice that you're looking to launch a GEG in an existing area where there's already a chapter. So ideally, before you're even nominated, your nominator would give you a heads up that there's already a chapter and you should just get in touch with them. But if not, we'll still also make sure you get connected with existing leaders. So for example, let's say there's a new teacher out there that's from Chicago and they want to launch a GEG. That's great. They will get a nomination, and hopefully the nominator will flag that. Like, hey, check out the directory, make sure there isn't any duplicate chapters already. And then if there is one in your area, just join that existing community and get nominated by those leaders there. And then, of course, when they fill out the application, we'll also see the region they want to launch a GEG in. And so we would reach out to them and say, hey, great to have you on board. We just recommend you join forces with the GEG leaders in GEG Chicagoland, for example. So another thing to point out, number 2, after you get approval for either joining an existing GEG or starting a new one, we'll send you a welcome letter, and that will give you access to the portal that I showed you a minute ago, the GEG Leaders Google Plus community, and a silent mailing list. So we don't use that for any communications or discussions. It's really just for sharing purposes. So I talked about the Leader Portal Getting Started tab. That's kind of like your first place to go to get started. And then after that, I think the most important part in this getting started process is really thinking about your GEG identity. So really thinking through, what name makes sense, what is representative of the region, what will resonate locally. And I know a lot of you have already kind of gone through this, but just as a reference point for the future and for new GEG leaders out there, and definitely have fun with this. Really think through what name can kind of resonate. And we've seen all great tons of examples. Some are just very descriptive, GEG Eastern Pennsylvania, for example. Others can use kind of more local descriptions, such as GEG SoCal or GEG NorCal. So it really depends on what the community would respond well to. But just make sure you please follow the brand guidelines. This is very important. Keeps you in compliance with the program, and also just gives everything a consistent look and messaging out there. So there's a tab specifically on branding guidelines, and I'll go to that real quickly here. So we have a really short kind of visual just explanations of how our brandings work, the different logos that you can use, how do you apply the logo, different types of logos for print versus digital assets, and other ideas that you can do. We definitely encourage you to get creative and have fun with our branding. If you want to use some stickers or t-shirts or put it on other websites, definitely feel free to do that. And then of course we have some guidelines on what you can or cannot do with the logos. So that's all there for you off the leader portal. So after you've thought about your identity and you've created your branding, it's time to create the actual Google Plus community and start promoting it and sharing it. So we have instructions on creating your Google Plus community. Again, probably most of you have already done this by now, but again, just for future reference, or if you ever want to check out on any settings or tips that we offer, that's also on the leader portal under the Groups Google Plus tab. The key thing is we need to make sure that our Google Plus communities are all public. So that way, when we link off to them from the GEG directory, anyone can request to join or join instantly. So after you've thought about your identity and created the branding and launched the Google Plus community and started promoting it, then you're off to doing events and then just kind of ongoing facilitation and sharing and collaboration within your GEG. So that's generally what it takes to get started. Now to talk about events a little bit. So these are some just highlights we wanted to kind of cover to just really help you think about events effectively. So once you've designed or planned an event, you'll want to complete the really short event registration form off the GEG Leader Portal Forms tab. And that I showed you earlier. So when you do this, this lets us know that you're planning to do an event. And you'll see event registration forms for your different regions. So just click on the relevant region. And it's very short. It's just basically telling us, what you're planning to do and when, and if you need any help with it. So once you fill that out, our team is notified, and you can kind of get started. Next, there is one requirement with events. In order for GEG chapters to remain active, you must hold at least one event per quarter or 90 days to remain active. The next item to keep in mind is, I already called this out earlier, but we have an events tab off the leader portal. So definitely check that out if you need any ideas. But also, more importantly, just ask your group, ask your fellow leaders. You can feel free to collaborate with each other on thinking about events, or just pull your actual GEG community too. They have particular needs or ideas, so you should definitely talk to them too about what you all might want to do. After you've conducted your event, please complete the short post-event survey form off of that same Forbes tab from the leader portal. And let me just show you that again real quickly here. So same Forms tab, here's the post-event survey to Google. So here it is. It's also very short. And basically this just helps us kind of capture the impact of these communities. So we'd love to know, what kind of events are being held, how many attendees are showing up, what kind of topics are being covered, any other kind of lesson learned and feedback for us to know so that we can make this better for everyone. And this will also help with getting recognition and future support for events. So if we know that there are more events happening, that can change how we support them. And also we can use them for recognition and sharing them either internally at Google or externally and highlighting them in other properties we have out there. So please take the time to report after you conduct events. Lastly, I wanted to call out, this is a more regional specific item, but if your GEG is located in North America, Western Europe, Australia, or New Zealand, we're not able to provide swag support. And that's due to just different jurisdictions in these regions where there's different requirements or limitations on swag that can be given to different educators or government or public employees. So so just to keep that simple, we're just not able to provide swag. But there's other types of support that we can offer. If you need ideas on figuring out the type of event you want to do, finding a space for it, finding speakers for it, or just getting any kind of other perspectives or input on what you might want to do. It's totally available. So. All right, now to talk about the GEG Curriculum and Learning Center. So these are additional resources for you to leverage with your GEG to up-level everyone's skill and knowledge and experience with all the tools that we have to offer. So the curriculum can be found on the Leader portal under the GEG Resources tab. And let me go to that really quickly here. So back to the Leader portal, GEG Resources, or sorry, EDU resources, here we go. GEG curriculum, so that's where it's located. And it's basically a public Google Drive folder that has over 17 lesson activities that you can use for any types of events or just assets and guides. And we've specifically made them activity-based, so it's not necessarily focused on the product itself, it's more about the use case or environment in which it would be helpful. So whether it's searching for books, tracking student attendance, lesson planning, communicating with parents or students, or surveying them, it's all here and totally free, totally offline friendly. You can print them or just use them digitally. It's really up to you how you want to take advantage of them, but it is a resource too. I did want to note, though, that this curriculum is quite basic. It's really more intended for those that are just getting started, but totally, again, feel free to use it if you feel it would be relevant to an activity you're doing. For those that want to take advantage of more advanced content out there, we also have our Google for Education Learning Center. And the nice thing is that all of this content, whether it's the curriculum or the Learning Center, it all aligns with our Google for Education certifications. So, and we lay out all those certification options on our Learning Center. I'll just show that to you really quickly here. So on our Learning Center, this is where we have tons of more courses and learning paths that you can take to really familiarize yourself with our tools and how can they be used in the classroom. So for example, on Classroom itself, we kind of have 2 levels for each course or product. So one kind of showing you the basics, what's the core functionality and top use cases, and then a more advanced course on, how can you apply it. So we have that across tons of tools that can be used in the education space here. So after you familiarize yourself with the tools, then you can get certified. So there's 4 paths. You can either take the basics. The basics exam is probably our easiest one. It's only 30 questions, it's completely free, and really just covers the basics of web literacy and the core Google products. So we highly recommend just taking this across all GEGs so everyone's kind of at that baseline level of familiarity. After the basics exam, we have Google Educator. This is much more advanced. You have to take at least 5 courses and pass the exams. Here are the 4 products: Gmail, Calendar, Docs, Drive, and Sites that must be taken or taking the exam, and then you can choose one elective. And you're welcome to choose all of them, take all of them, but you have to take at least a total of 5 of these exams to get the Google Educator badge and certificate. The more advanced levels of certifications are becoming either a trainer or a Google certified teacher. So that's really if you want to go out and train others or kind of be an ambassador in the community and really just champion innovative uses of our tools in the classroom. So the Learning Center is there for those that want to get more advanced. But at a basic level, starting out with our basics exam is really recommended. So now to cover some best practices that we've seen since we've launched this program a few months ago. So first is on naming and identity. So try to avoid using acronyms for your chapter names, at least when you submit your application or just describing it to those that are just being introduced to it, and that helps to avoid confusion. And this applies to our website particularly. So for example, maybe perhaps GEG NYC, might be easily identified and known, within the U.S. and maybe some other continents, but not for everyone. and vice versa. This can work for other countries and regions. So we just want to make sure everyone knows where a GEG is located. Now, of course, within your own logo and branding and the name of your particular Google Plus community, that's where you can make it more locally relevant. But at least on our website, we won't be using any acronyms that will cause confusion. Another best practice is around how to get started in terms of the scope of your community and its size. So it's important to think about whether you want to start as like a big critical mass, try to get as many people all in one place together, or if you want to set out a little bit more small and then try to grow from there. We don't really have a hard and fast rule. The goal here is to just facilitate meaningful gathering and community and knowledge sharing. So however you think that would work best for your region is what we recommend. For specifically in the US, we've seen a lot of chapters start more at the state level first. And then that way, everyone within the state, say for instance, Texas or Colorado or New Jersey, can all come together to one place and then try to have a larger group of leaders from different regions within the state, so that there's representation, and then there will be events throughout the whole state. So it'll make it easier for everyone to have a chance to attend. In other regions, we've seen that it's a little bit more sprawling, and so it makes sense to kind of break things up a little bit better, particularly in the northeast portion of the United States, or in Australia, or even the United Kingdom. We've seen groups kind of segment out a little bit too. So, if you want to have something for particular states or kind of a pan area like GEG SoCal or NorCal. So again, whatever resonates with the community, whatever breakdowns make sense so that folks can really just get together easily. That's what we really recommend. And on that point around cross-regional, cross-leader collaboration. So we've often been asked, can you have more than one leader? Absolutely. We definitely encourage that. And it's really great when we see that there are leaders representing different regions within an area or country or state or province. So we highly recommend that, more ideas, more sharing of the responsibilities, more perspectives. So we definitely recommend that. This I mentioned before, but just to reiterate again, we also think it's really helpful when you survey or poll your GEG members for ideas and needs. Because we know that every region's different, everyone's coming from different places with these tools and what they want out of their community. So just ask them what they want. They might already have some great ideas and things that could be done. And then find ways for folks to self-identify and kind of just know who's who. We've seen tons of chapters create member maps, and I'll show you some examples of those in a second. So really just find ways to develop the community together. It should really be a group effort. And then the other thing we've seen that works really well is seeking partnerships or collaboration or sponsorships with other entities and organizations. So we've seen some GEGs from different regions collaborate together. I think at a Computer Using Educators event in Southern California, we had both GEG SoCal and GEG Central Valley do a kind of a joint meetup. We've seen GEG Hawaii partner with a nonprofit and kind of collaborated on a Google Maps and Earth and geography event. So, or we've seen other GEGs leverage startups as spaces, or swag sponsorship or food sponsorship to help them with their meetups and events. So usually when an initiative is concerning education and educators and teachers, there's just tons of support out there for organizations that want to help. So definitely seek them out if you see a fit. And just to give you some examples of GEGs that have done really cool things, and there's so many more. We don't have enough time to show you all the examples, but everyone's doing such a wonderful job. But here's just some really specific examples and things that might be helpful to try in your GEG for the future. So I mentioned a member map earlier, so a really cool way to give your community a sense of knowing who's who, what regions are represented, what interests there are, and just kind of give a visual representation of that to help with coordinating things or collaboration. So GEG Indiana is one example of that, and this is definitely one of the faster growing GEGs I've seen recently. So here in their About page, they've created a GEG Indiana member map powered by Google Maps engine. And that's another really great tool that just allows you to make kind of custom maps. So here with this member map, they have place markers for all the members throughout their GEG. So folks have added their names and contact information, what schools they're at, what tools they're interested in. So it's just a really nice way to kind of see who's around and what everyone's up to. And then also they've overlaid with other relevant events that are going on, such as an ed camp going on. So this was a really just great example of getting a map out there to show who's in the community. Over in GEG Kansas, they've really done a great job with structuring their Google Plus community around discussion categories, having a calendar of events going on, and tons of resource sites that are specific to educators in Kansas. And I must say another special shout out for them. I think they're one of the largest chapters globally, at least in the US for sure. So it's been really exciting to see them grow. But all communities are also growing really rapidly. So here's just an example. Oh my gosh, look at this Chrome car. So we have really great discussion categories here. They have one for group member introductions, project-based learning, Chromebooks, classroom, tips, events, scripts. So they've really broken it down so that it's easy to kind of know where you should post or find discussions. And then over here, they have some nice resources. They have another similar kind of map that shows schools that use apps for education, links to event sites, training maps, training calendars, or videos showing what they're up to. Down under in Australia with GEG Melbourne, they've really done a great job with driving a lot of innovation and collaboration and social elements into their events. Particularly, I've heard of a lot of success with design sprints where teachers kind of come together and try to build a prototype for a solution that they're working on in the classroom. And then they also use hashtags quite generously. I've seen the GEG Melbourne hashtag and some other ones out there. So they really kind of just let the teachers be activists and entrepreneurs and builders and makers. So that's been really, really exciting to see. Back with GEG Chicagoland and recently Southeast Wisconsin, we've been impressed with how they keep the fun and lively spirit in this movement. So that can be just really simple, informal socials or happy hours. Fun is important. We want this to be fun. Otherwise, it's just harder to kind of keep coming back and being engaged. And then also, another powerful thing that we've seen over time is sometimes a more, again, social, fun environment can be the best for learning. When you have, another peer side by side, just kind of, informally telling you about their experience or best practice or a new tool or tip they've found and sharing it with you, in a small group, fun setting. So definitely have liberty with having your GEG have fun together. Over in Texas, GEG Texas, they've done a great job with structuring the organization of their chapters. So I mentioned earlier there's going to be some regions where there's a lot more sprawl in the region. And so figuring out how can you break down those chapters and boundaries in a way that makes sense so that there's still meaningful gathering and community building. So with GEG Texas, what they've decided to do is create central branding for the state. So all chapters will use the same GEG Texas logo, but then they'll have different names corresponding with their region. So there's a GEG Centex for the central area. There's a GEG Nortex for the northern area. So you can definitely take advantage of that if you're in a kind of more sprawled region to build some structure. They've also had a really great Hangout series. So it's kind of nice to see different topics being presented, and it's just kind of at a consistent schedule, so you can know what to expect and have different opportunities to get involved. Over in the United Kingdom, they've done a great job with involving students in some of their activities, particularly in Hangouts that they've held already. They've actually had students join in and present and be part of the discussion. So we think that's very powerful and important, and totally something that other groups could do, just to have that student voice and expand those relationships and just really collaborate together. And then finally, in North Carolina, they've done a great job with doing some nice regional coverage with their leaders. So I think they have around 7 or so leaders right now. And they've called them out specifically on their Google Plus community page. So it's really easy to identify them and know who's who. And they've also created a Twitter handle to keep the conversations going on there. So really great example of how to kind of introduce yourselves as a leader to your community, and leveraging other tools, particularly Twitter, if you know that your audience will be active on there. All right, so we're almost going to be wrapping up here. I just wanted to mention some other new opportunities to collaborate with us if you're interested. Please just send me an email or plus me on Google Plus, or post to the GEG Leaders community if you're interested. Particularly so now that we've launched the program and we're touching thousands of teachers globally in lots of countries and regions. Now we're trying to pilot some new initiatives to really enhance the community experience and just make sure that this is a valuable resource for everyone. So some new pilots that we're trying out are GEG Buddies, Lesson Plan Jam, and GEG Study Groups. So GEG Buddies, this is basically trying to explore how can we introduce new teachers and educators into a GEG via a buddy system or buddy group. So this is where everyone in the chapter brings in 5 new teachers and teaches them just one favorite tool or tip or use case, and then documenting that all together as kind of like a mini buddy system or group. And the Lesson Plan Jam is basically a venue for teachers to come together with one of their existing lesson or unit plans, and then figuring out how can they improve it or enhance it with Google tools or other technologies. So it's really a way to explore new learning models and map that out, and then you walk away with a nice new lesson plan that you can use in the future. And then GEG study groups are a way to just kind of get everyone more familiar and confident with using the tools. So I mentioned a lot of our certifications have exams, and so what we're trying to do with the study group program is kind of package all the materials so it's really easy to understand how to study for it, and then just kind of give some tips and guidance on how a group can study together to get all those exams passed. And then, of course, there's other initiatives that we're always going to be thinking about. You might have heard of our program, Education on Air, that we've held in the last couple of years, and we're going to be doing another one with the back-to-school season coming up. So if you're interested in virtual conferencing and how your GEG might be able to get involved with that, definitely feel free to reach out. All right, lastly, before we go into Q&A, I wanted to highlight some frequently asked questions and answers that have come up since we've launched the program. And some of these I've probably already covered before, but just to cover them again for clarity. So nomination, how do I nominate others to be a GEG leader? Or if I want to add co-leaders. So just use the nomination form that I mentioned earlier, just add in their name and information, and then they'll be sent an application form. Can you have more than one leader per GEG? Yes, absolutely, and we encourage it. So this is, helpful for having more ideas and, better scale and supporting your group. Can you be a leader for more than one GEG? So technically, yes, we don't have any limitations on that at this point. We just ask that you're mindful of your own, bandwidth and priorities, and we don't want you to burn out. Just do what you can. Of course, if you live in an area or multiple areas where you do want to get involved, definitely feel free to go for it. But you're definitely not obligated to. Can we have a GEG by discipline or school type? For example, GEG Math or GEG Math teachers or international schools. So at this time, we're not supporting these types of GEGs, but we're definitely going to revisit this in the future. We want to make sure we kind of have our regional GEGs established and kind of settled first, and then we'll start exploring how we might want to support GEGs by a certain discipline or other functions. So stay tuned and we'll have updates on that. Can different GEGs collaborate together? What about with GDG or other communities? Absolutely, this is also something we strongly encourage, particularly if it's multiple regions that want to come together, either at a conference or another larger event, maybe having a GEG meetup before or after as a debrief, as one example we've seen that works well. Or if there's other functional groups out there, particularly Google developer groups, and let me just show you what they're about here real quickly. So Google developer groups is actually kind of the inspiration behind GEG. It's a similar program at Google, but it supports more of the technical crowd that's interested in application development and APIs. So they're in tons of more countries and have many more chapters than we do right now. But in the future, we know that GEG will definitely grow as rapidly as GDGs have. But we do know within the GDG community, there's a lot of folks that already work in education settings, and they've expressed a lot of interest in partnering with GEG, particularly around either hackathons or coding and programming skills development with educators and students. So if you want to check out the directory for GDGs, just visit their directory and see what chapters are in your region, and feel free to reach out and collaborate on some events. So here, it's just an example of where they're located. So chances are there is a GDG near you. Let's see. When will our GEG be added to the map? That directory I just showed you on our website a while back. So we push out updates about once a month, usually at the beginning or middle of the month. How long does it take for a GEG leader application to be processed? Typically 1 to 2 weeks. When we first launched the program, there was more of a backlog because we had tons of interest. So it took us a little bit longer to process them. But now it's a much quicker turnaround, and typically within a week, they'll be approved. Can we design our own custom logo or branding? So we please ask to follow our brand guidelines on the portal, and we encourage you to have fun with it. Definitely feel free to leverage the logo and name and identity on other materials. We just ask that you follow the guidelines. And if there's any questions, please post to the community or contact us. All right, so that covers the presentation I had. Let me jump to our stream and see if there's any questions. And feel free to post any if you've thought of anything else afterward. So here's a question about the curriculum. Is it mandatory or optional? Absolutely optional. You're welcome to use the one we provide, or if there's other materials or tutorials out there that you think would be helpful, feel free to use them. So there's definitely no requirements on which one you use. Question about GEG Buddies. Does GEG Buddies include pre-service teachers? Yes, absolutely. In fact, that would be a great group to get involved with that. So whoever you think would benefit from just a new introduction to these tools that are available. Question on supporting online or virtual events. So when you fill out that event registration form, just mark in the relevant checkboxes what kind of support you're interested in. So whether you want input on the agenda, or finding speakers, or just logistics and operations of things, we're happy to provide some guidance on that. Let's see, how is Google engaging national leaders, ministries of education to bring about educational reform? That's a great question. So you might have heard that our team has been working with several ministries of education around the world, such as in Malaysia and Romania and tons of other regions. And virtually in all of them, we're also introducing GEGs as a mechanism for peer-led professional development and community building. So particularly we'll work with the ministry and partner on how they'll think about, how do they want to make this as a resource available to their teachers. How would they want to organize communities. What kind of teachers would be interested, and how can they be trained and enabled to be leaders in their own communities? So we definitely see this as an important way to bring about reform in a grassroots way, empowering educators to bring about change. All right, let's see if there's any other questions coming in. All right, well, I don't think I see any other questions, but we still have the GEG Leaders Google Plus community, so feel free to post there. We're always monitoring that, or just feel free to contact us directly via email or on Google Plus. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in and your just participation and support of this program so far. We're really excited at how fast we've grown and how much more we can do together to really bring about change in education. So thanks again, and we'll see you in GEG. Bye-bye.